meeting to order. All members are present. I can see two non-committee members. Larry, Dan, you wish to be compensated? No. Dan? Yes, okay. Then I'm not missing anything. Okay. Public comments.
It's time for public comments, right?
Please.
Okay, good. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jackie. I'm a retired pharmacist. I understand that you are here trying to work out mandating vaccinations, is what you call them? No? For Clearview?
No, we're just discussing it.
Okay, good. That's what I'm here for. All right, let me just take a quick review of this experimental use authorization. This experimental use authorization injection is not a vaccine by any means. A vaccine has a little bit of an infectious source that you put in the arm. Your body has a wonderful immune system. It builds up a recipe to fight off this, and that's what a vaccine is for. This, however, is a gene-altering jab. And let me share with you what one of the doctors says that she has discovered with her 1,600 patients. The first shot has a lot of saline, and then some ingredients that do significant damage to your immune system and damage to 27 organ systems in the body, specifically the brain, the ovaries, the testes, and the heart. It wipes out your ability to make your blood cells by at least 30 to at the maximum 50% with the first shot. 8 weeks later, when your body would normally regenerate these immune system components, you get another shot. And it further reduces the ability of your immune system to function. So that second dose has a little less saline and a little bit more of harmful ingredients. So now you've wiped out anywhere from 50 to 70% of your immune system over the course of 60 days. The booster that comes through has 81 strands of foreign bacteria that you have never come in contact with. Well, let me give you an idea of two of the items that are in there. One is Marburg, and the other one is Ebola. And then you don't have a lot of immune system function to fight this off. That's detrimental to your health. And then you start to get chronic inflammation. And this works with the central nervous system, the things like Guillain-Barré, the things like seizures, Alzheimer's, these things are all developing. And then what we have is people walking around without an immune system, no ability to create a new immune system, and 81 strands of foreign bacteria along with HIV. The definition of HIV is that you can't produce an immune system. So this is what we find the doctors have found with using these genetic altering injections. Now, The Lancet is a very prestigious magazine in the medical field, and The Lancet has found that fully vaccinated individuals with breakthrough infections have a peak viral load similar to the unvaccinated cases. In other words, there's no difference between those who have been vaccinated and those who have not. I can tell you that the CDC has no proof that people who have had the genome-altering injection spread a virus, any more so than people who have not had that injection. In other words, the injection doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't prevent you from getting COVID at all. Now, I want to quote from a fellow by the name of Dr. David Martin. He's a professional physician. He's a developer of advanced computer systems. He's advisor to industry and governments. And he's an author, a professor, and a public speaker. And what he has directed your attention to, and I will too, is there are some treasonous acts with this injection because it does not function as it should. That's called fraud. And so when you have something that causes fraud, and it does not help the immune system of anyone that's been injected with it, that's genocidal. And I'm going to use that word. It's also bioterrorism. So if I can direct your attention to Section 18, United States Code 2339, this is called funding and conspiring to acts of terror when these jabs are created. I can tell you that this also, by the way, there are nanobots in here. And the nanobots get into the central nervous system, and they attach to the neurons. And then I have videos of people who, when they come near their phone or a television on the wall, their body is trying to connect to 5G. This is called artificial intelligence. The Supreme Court has already determined that anyone whose genome has been altered, as this jab does, is now artificial intelligence, and they are owned by the corporation that has jabbed them. That's already been proven by the Supreme Court. I can tell you this, that no judicial standard has been applied to validate the false claims of SARS-CoV-2 causing a severe infection called COVID-19. Nowhere in the world, have they been able to produce that little infectious thing called COVID-19. In other words, it was a bad flu that they unleashed upon us. I can tell you that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals a week ago Saturday ruled to keep its stay on the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. That's OSHA. They were trying to put out an emergency rule that would require employers of more than 100 employees to mandate COVID-19 vaccines in place, determining that the private businesses challenging the rule were likely to win their case. They did. The court noted in its decision that an obscure provision in the OSHA Agency Act, called an Emergency Temporary Standard, violates the 1950 Administrative Procedures Act, which says that all rulemaking procedures of federal government agencies and departments must go through a lengthy public comment procedure before their issuance, so they're in violation. And so the U.S. Circuit Court, Fifth Circuit Court, which applies to the United States of America, the court below the Supreme Court, basically says this is illegal and unconstitutional. And then I'd like to direct you finally to the Nuremberg Code. Are you familiar with the Nuremberg Code? That was activated at the end of World War II for the Nazis that were experimenting on people in Auschwitz and Treblinka, all those places. So the Nuremberg Code has only 10 statements in it. I'm going to read them out to you. The first one is the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Most people do not know the side effects that are occurring with this, the blood clots, the cardiac events. There's a Delta pilot that actually died en route, in flight, piloting a jumbo jet. The co-pilot got out of his seat to try to render assistance, but the guy was already dead. The co-pilot gets back in his seat. He calls out an emergency. They land. They have to, disembark all the passengers and get new pilot. And then the poor fellow that was a co-pilot was reprimanded for leaving his seat, even though it was on autopilot. So anyway, in addition to the cardiac events, then we also have the antibody-dependent effects, which are those longer-term effects. So no one's getting this information before they get this injection. The experiment should be such to yield fruitful results for the good of society. When we see people that have damaged immune systems and that are succumbing to very bizarre infections, it's not for the good of society. The experiment should be so designed that the anticipated results will justify the performance. With those children that are getting injected with this, they're developing myocarditis. Myocarditis in the 12 to 18-year-old group is fatal in 5 years. And as the doctors say right now, it's irreversible. The experiment should be conducted to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. No experiment should be conducted where there is an a priori reason to believe that death or disability will occur. That's a violation right there. The degree of risk to be taken should never exceed that determined by the humanitarian importance of the problem to be solved. And proper preparations have to be made to protect the experimental subject against even remote possibilities of injury, disability, or death. And number 8, the experiment should be conducted only by scientifically qualified persons. Number 9, during the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment to an end. Obviously, you can opt out of the multiple injections. It is my understanding that that first booster shot with all the infectious material in it is only the first one. They have 3 more planned from what the doctors have discovered. And number 10, during the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage. I'm going to leave you a copy of this. You can share it. across this nation, a couple of things have happened in the last week. The first thing that happened was Oklahoma. And this kind of is closer to home for Wisconsin. There's a healthcare group called Ascension. They're headquartered in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, as their headquarters, they have just passed a law that says you can't force anyone to get this. It's unconstitutional. The second thing that's happening is in California. California has a major healthcare group, and that one's called Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente has most of the healthcare hospitals and clinics in California and Hawaii. And as of yesterday, their union of medical professionals has decided to go out on strike because they are refusing to accept this job. I can tell you that they're going to have a hard time keeping their hospitals and clinics running without staff. I urge you to consider these things because I think that if the United States Federal Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is involved, that it would be unconstitutional to require this for staff at your Clearview nursing home. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Steve Caulfield. I live in Dodge County, and I would like to just relay some information. I had been appalled at the attempting forced masking of humanity. But that's all gone by the wayside, which has now led to the attempted forcing of vaccination on all American population. Disregarding scientific reasoning or prudence has brought to the forefront the absolute worst in certain people. I refer to them as authoritarians, desperately seeking more power over the citizenry of this country. They don't care that an EUA so-called vaccine with no long-term testing is to be administered without personal consent to every person ages 5 and up. There is now an experimental vaccination program being performed at UW in Madison on infants as young as 6 months old. The human race is not one large cohort of lab rats to be coerced into a quantitative experiment. It brings to mind the repeating of history and how dictatorships come to fruition in the last century. Totalitarianism starts with a willing group of the populace that is made up of micromanagers, control freaks, and narcissists. These people enlist the aberrant, fearful, easily led portion of the populace to deceive the majority of the populace that they are in the minority, not only in numbers, but authority, and have no recourse but to obey and shut up. In science, there is the law: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. These COVID mandates, which are not law, has brought about the worst in a certain segment of the citizenry, and has brought the best in another. Men and women who hold dear individual liberty, reason and logic are coalescing and realizing that there are many within government which are resisting these unconstitutional mandates. Cities, towns, counties, states throughout America recognize the downward spiral into socialism and are calling the bluff of these sociopaths. The COVID cultists need to realize there is no allowance for emergency powers in our Bill of Rights, nor mandates in our Constitution. Vaccine mandates have nothing to do with public health, but everything to do with public control, as we see evidenced in Australia. COVID cultists care more about the narrative than the facts. If facts were important, they need look no further than Singapore, Israel, Ireland, just to name a few, who have all been vaccinated with rates in excess of 85%. Yet their hospitalizations are the highest in the world, with the majority being fully vaxxed. Unvaccinated people previously exposed with natural immunity are 27 times more protected than those who have been fully vaxxed. This is a fact. This evidence is purposely suppressed by the activist media. So, the elephant in the room is, and I want you to ponder this question real carefully, if the vaccines work, then the unvaccinated poses no threat at all to the vaccinated. And if they don't work, then why are they mandating them in the first place? Would anyone here care to succinctly answer that question? Anyone feel?
We can't respond to you.
Well, okay, then ponder it. I didn't think so.
I'm Linda Koppel, work in Watertown, Wisconsin, and as a prior healthcare worker, employee, I abhor the thought of having to be forced vaccinated. I'm one of those who used to quit the job before I would succumb to wearing a mask or the flu vaccine. So to be considering this mandated COVID vaccine is unbelievable. It was just a few short months ago that the public was attending these board meetings, and for the most part unanimous against masking. We had the foresight, knowing that if they control us with the mask, the vaccines will be next. And here we are, everything we tried to fight against, now we have this dangerous vaccine pending. During the mask push, we were told, it's just a mask. We knew it was more than just a mask. Months later, this is what just the mask has now revealed. I will reference only medical problems, ignoring all the psychological damage masks are also responsible for. Here are some quotes from National News. Mask mouth is spreading like wildfire, and dentists are warning that it could have serious consequences, including death. Gum disease, periodontal disease, will eventually lead to strokes and an increased risk of heart attacks, warns Dr. Marcus Savani. Bottom line is, there's now abundance of harm that is documented regarding the horrific dangers of wearing just the mask. Fast forward to today. Now we're being told it's just a vaccine, it's safe, and it's effective against COVID. I have yet to see any clinical documented scientific studies proving the case that the COVID experimental gene therapy jab is safe or effective. On the contrary, untold numbers of doctors, well-researched studies showing the hideous long-term effects related to this jab. And then there's the VAERS report. They say this only includes 1% of documented reports. How many deaths? This is through November 5th, 2021. 18,461 deaths related to the jab. 982 hospitalizations. There's also miscarriages, bell palsies, heart attacks, doctor's visits. Permanently disabled. Think of this for a minute. Permanently disabled, 29,104, all for complying to take a vaccine that they believed and were led to believe was safe. Is it any wonder that we have masses of people refusing this jab mandate? Our healthcare workers, who were previously appreciated as heroes, who incidentally worked with infected patients, are now all of a sudden considered health risks, and they need to agree to a forced experimental vaccination with no liability to cover medical expenses if injured or died. And what about the patients left with inadequate staff? My mother, cognitively aware, but dependent in all areas from a stroke 2 years ago, resides at Marquardt Manor in Watertown. and I can say nothing, I can give them nothing but praise for the good care that they have given her. What will happen to her when half of the staff are fired for refusing this jab? If this was truly about health care, why not any concern for the dependent patients left with inadequate staffing? Realize this, there will be repercussions from these vaccine mandates. Consider our daughter. 15 years she worked in hospice. The job now mandated the vaccine. She was fired. She found a new job. She's making more money, and there's no mandate, and she'll never go back to that previous job of 15 years. Likewise, you can expect the same thing with your Clearview employees. You fire them because they shouldn't quit. They'll find other jobs, and you will be left without healthcare professionals with experience. And here's some headlines, and this may be why some of these employees are hesitant in getting the job. Natural News, situation update, November 15th, 2021. The vaccinated are dropping dead in plain view as Fauci admits total vax failure. And as your first speaker mentioned, the CDC admits there's no record of an unvaccinated person spreading COVID after recovering. And then let's think of this dilemma that is so ridiculous, which just makes you realize that there's something very wrong about this whole COVID nonsense. Not to say there's not a virus, but it's way overblown. Here's the dilemma. Our government and our media is trying to convince the unvaccinated to get vaccinated because it's safe. And then they tell the vaccinated that their double-dose vaccines are no longer effective and they need a booster to be safe. And after that, they'll have to have another booster and another booster and another booster. The bottom line is there is so much evidence out there that these jabs are dangerous, and the only explanation is that it is government tyranny. Our society is crumbling over this government tyranny and media hysteria instead of us standing together and fighting this. Please do not vote this in. Thank you. Oh, I want to do this. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, you go. Thank you.
Just to announce you've got about 7 minutes left.
Hi, my name is Julie Shaw. I've never been up here before, but I just very recently found out what's trying to go through here. I will tell you I'm a naturalist, I'm an herbalist, and I am definitely set against these. I'm here today as a resident. I've been here for over 20 years. I'm extremely disappointed that this has even gone as far as it has. It's even got here. We elected you guys because we believe that you had our best interest at heart. If you're letting this come in, and you're telling people up at Clearview, if you want a job, you have to get a jab, you have to get poison put into your body, put yourself in their place. Would you want to be in their place? If you were told you have to get a jab in order to keep your seats, would you take it? I know, you can't answer me. Ponder. How can you in good conscience do this? They're jabbing children. They're putting poison in children. Do you have any grandkids? Do you have any great-grandkids? Do you want to take these kids and put these and have the jab go into them and have them die? Put yourself in their position. You guys were elected by us. We trusted you. Okay? We still do trust. We trust you to do the right thing. I will let you know that if you are vaccinated, you will shed. Shedding is real. I have been in menopause for 10 years. I went to my job. I started my period. Welcome that, women. That's not fun, trust me. I had an uncle, got the jab a little over a year ago, died a horrible, horrible, horrible death. Besides the fact that he died, he went through convulsions, he went through heart problems, he ended up open heart surgery because his valve wasn't working for being jabbed. I don't ever want to see this happen to anybody. It was the most horrible, horrible thing I've ever. You cry, and you cry for days, and there's nothing you can do. Nothing. Being an herbalist, you've been jabbed, come see me. I can help get that heavy metals out of your bodies. That's exactly, just a little bit of a point of trying to get clean. As far as I'm concerned, I just consider that murder. You guys took an oath of office. Do you remember what it is? I can help you out with it if you've forgotten. I will be more than happy to tell you. But with your oath of office, you also took an oath of Wisconsin. Does anybody know what the Wisconsin oath is that you also took? I can help you out with that too if you need help. This is a mandate. It's not a law. There is a difference between a mandate and a law. Our so-called president just decided to speak this, and the media ran with it. Nobody put this on paper until OSHA got involved. I'm sorry, OSHA does not rule my life, and I would really hope that they don't rule yours either. This has never been on paper. As somebody said to me before, this is treason. This is treason. This is terrorism. Think about Clearview. We all get, you guys, this county gets funding for Clearview, correct? If you force these people to do this, and they leave, and there's nobody working it, Clearview shuts. Oh my, there goes some money. Can't keep the government money if you don't have anything to keep open. The state says that you can't deprive a person of life or liberty. And as the lady just said before me, there is no proof that this can help you, but there's tons and tons and tons of proof that this can kill you or disable you for life. Then you, okay, these people don't have a job. So what do? They apply for Social Security and they get turned down. Now what do? They lose everything that they've worked their whole lives for? For what? A jab that's not even a law? Come on guys, please. This is Dodge County. We are good people. We are hard-working people. Don't let this happen. Please don't let this happen. Please stand to your rules. We voted you in. Stand by us. And if you can't stand by us, step down and let somebody sit in your chair that can. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, close the public comment session. I need approval of the open session and closed session minutes of the regular meetings of October 19th and the special meetings of October 29th and November 2nd. Second. Discussion, any corrections, alterations? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Review, discuss, and consider the 2022 wage for part-time clerical secretary position on the miscellaneous wage schedule.
The sheriff had to leave, so I will handle this. So on the miscellaneous wage scale, these are positions that are seasonal, very, very part-time. They don't reside on the Dodge County regular wage schedule. Under the sheriff's department, they have a part-time clerical position. This is a position that assists the deputy secretaries, fills in for deputy secretaries for vacations, etc. And the current pay for this position is $15.15. And the sheriff is proposing an increase for next year of $18.20, which coincides with the starting wage of the new deputy secretary pay grade. And so these positions are one that comes before you for your approval outside of the regular compensation plan, so they're not subject to any cost of living or step increases.
On the miscellaneous wage, if somebody's on that, can we move them, that position to a full-time or higher than a 50% position? Or does that take a full documentation to do that?
So what would happen is if, because these are very part-time seasonal positions. If the department wanted to create a part-time benefited or full-time benefited position, then they would have to go through a JDQ process, have it reviewed, recommendation for placement in the pay grade structure, and then the county board would have to pass a resolution to include that.
Okay.
Is there anyone in this position right now?
Yes.
Where do we have people in that position? What department is?
This is only at the sheriff's department, one position, yeah, one person position.
And that person in the sheriff's department is now part-time, less than 50%?
Scott, here for me, I ask any questions.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how long we've had that there at the sheriff's.
That position, it goes back long before I was here.
Okay. so
It's been a long-standing position, yes.
All right. And what is that person paid now? I mean, we're talking about,
$15.15 an hour is the current pay.
and how did we get that?
That just kind of comes from, you know, what the recommendation is. Usually, what happens is if there's a cost of living associated with the wage scale, the regular wage scale, then department heads would come before this committee and ask for something similar or, you know, something different, that sort of thing. So,
Must have been before I got on this committee too. Well, what's the difference between this one and what we've done in other departments where they've hired someone part-time with outside, you know, that without non-benefited, usually just as a temporary
Mhm.
position?
So what we do is we look at the duties that are associated with that position, and if they align with, you know, a full-time position or a regular part-time position, that's usually where we try to start them as that start step, or a little bit below.
And we usually had a time ending date when we did those temporary positions.
Yeah.
There is no, it's just open-ended on this one?
Yep.
Do they work regular hours every week?
She,
Or is it-
for the most part, yes. I think she might have some flexibility a little bit, but it's Monday through Friday, and her hours are within that time period, but it might vary a little bit from day to day.
Who they report to?
The jail admin directly.
But it's unbenefited, so it has to be less than
Yeah.
4 hours a day.
I'm sorry?
It has to be less than 4 hours a day if she is coming in.
Yes, on average, over the course of the year, it has to be less than 1,040 hours.
What I was getting at, I thought maybe it was to fill in for vacations or, for the.
Yeah, it's not an
secretary.
like an occasional or on-call, she's got regular set work hours.
You did say that the 1820 coincides with what we're paying the full-time, right?
The start step for that position.
Starts.
And what are we considering doing now?
The request would be to increase that part-time clerical position from $15.15 an hour to $18.20 an hour.
And still no benefit?
Well, I have no problem with these increases that they're showing here, but I have a real problem when I see that the increases that they're getting, and then our employees, our permanent employees, who we should show appreciation for are getting less money than that. And I think that is a real shame. Our regular employees, to me, is something that I tried having an amendment for the budget, and I will be bringing it up again for a future agenda item, but this, to me, I have no problem with giving these folks the increases. But we also are to keep in mind the people that we do have working for the county right now, and we are not doing that.
Well, this is just to make them equal to what the new step would be in our next budget, so.
I said I have no problem with this.
Right. Any other further questions? Discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second to that motion? I'll second that. That's just the top.
Just one position.
Yes.
So any further discussion?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that because the sheriff had to leave and I quick ran over, but just to, again, clarify, this is one particular position. It lands on the miscellaneous wage scale. When I reviewed that scale earlier this late summer, early fall regarding the different wages, we didn't have a specific discussion about it at that time. After the budget and everything was submitted, it came to our attention that as far as that employee, and we've been moving different responsibilities onto that particular employee where the wage that person's getting is really not commensurate anymore to the duties they're doing. And if that employee would leave and then we'd have to refill that, we probably would either not be able to have those duties covered by the next employee, or we would have to make that adjustment. I think the sheriff's plan is then in August of next year would probably be to eliminate the position as it's titled right now and recreate it as the deputy secretary position that we're talking about. But in the meantime, we feel this is the appropriate move because the responsibilities for that position are more than what they were originally for that, whenever historically that position was created. That person has taken on added responsibilities.
Thank you.
You're saying you would then move, maybe next year, move it to a regular position and off the miscellaneous scale? Maybe to a benefit, maybe.
Well, that's what the sheriff explained to me briefly, that's his intent for next August is to eliminate the position as it is right now, as that, whatever it's titled, I don't recall, and recreate it as the appropriate deputy secretary position.
Full-time?
That I didn't ask him that specifically, so I don't want to misstate what his intent is.
Concern would be long-term, if this were to end up being done on a regular basis, where you all of a sudden you get a miscellaneous wage person, schedule out there for people that are doing county work, and it expands. I would have a concern on that long-term. I can understand you want to keep this person, that's why you want to sit there and offer an increase, but is this the start of something that's going to be in the future where we got miscellaneous workers all over?
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Oh, I said that.
What you saying? Okay. Okay, so that passes. Okay, discuss and consider new policy for pool 911 communications officers, correctional officers, and educational transport officer positions regarding hours of work requirement and uniform allowance.
Okay, so we've had pool status, occasional transport officers for quite some time. We've recently established the pool status 911 communications officer and corrections officer positions. These are all part-time, less than 20 hours per week, so there are no benefits. In discussing these positions and whether or not we want to put some sort of minimum hour requirement on them, similar to what Clearview does with flexies. There's two different levels of flexies over at Clearview, which Clearview Flexi 1 and Clearview Flexi 2s. There are different hour requirements associated with each of those. And so the thought was we would start with a request to have these positions at least work a minimum of 12 hours per month, unless called off the schedule by management, which means we wouldn't need you. We've got enough staff coverage for that. The other thing that was discussed is the fact that these individuals are still required to wear a uniform, and so providing some sort of uniform allowance for them on a yearly basis. And the thought there is to do an annual uniform allowance of $250. It's prorated based on your hire date or termination date. And employees who do not meet the 12-hour per month requirement will forfeit the annual uniform allowance for the following year. So that's the recommendation.
So you're gonna do that as an average of 12 hours a month? So you'll figure it out to the 144 hours if they don't do that.
That should probably be put into policy there, because I was gonna ask the same question. And it's worded that it's 12 hours per month requirement. Maybe an average 12 hour per month requirement.
Yep.
What is the uniform allowance?
250 hours.
Once annual?
I don't have a problem with the minimum. I mean, these people here working in communications, correctional, and the transport officers, I mean, can they stay sharp if they're not up to date with what's going on? I even question if 12 hours a month is enough.
I don't know if you have comment on that?
I'm trying to find a balance of enough to be able to keep their skills adequate to fill in, but then if you require more, that's basically you're paying them on top of your already existing salaries and stuff, because you're bringing them in extra. So I think we've settled on that, and we're comfortable with that. That should provide it, and we can evaluate as we go forward. If we're not seeing the skills being retained, we can modify it at that point.
And you didn't want to go over the 20 hours.
Right.
per se.
Any further questions? None, I'll entertain a motion.
Also move with the understanding we're putting the
Yep,
average.
the average, got that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion on that?
I see on the average, what you're saying, using that for, you go 6 months and they're doing 8 hours, then, and then you have to go another 6 months to, you'd be doing 20 hours to get to their 12 hours. What are you using for on average?
For a year.
For a year's time? Over a course of a year? How would you come up with that?
Well, I think the only thing in there that talks about the 12 hours, and you're putting it as a requirement on the uniform allowance. And if there's a month where they don't work 12 hours, I'd hate to see somebody that's working regularly, maybe they're sick or they're off for a while, or these are typically retired people, right?
That, a lot of them likely will be for all of these positions, so,
So if they're gone for a while, I just hate to see them lose an allowance.
That's not what you're seeing, though. It's, like Dennis said, you don't wanna see them lose their skills as it, so you're talking about that $250, that's not anything to me. I'm talking about their skills, and how you're seeing that on average, how do you tell it average? You wait a whole year, and then the guy's averaging 8 hours, well, you were averaging 8 hours, so you're done. Where do you come up with an average? I mean, you gotta tell me where you're going to come and say, okay, in 6 months time period, you have to be averaging 12 hours a month before you're done, or is it 12 hours for a year before you're done? What's your criteria? I don't know.
Well, we said 144 hours per year. We can reduce to 12 hours a month.
I guess-
So you're gonna allow them a whole year of maybe not doing the 12 hours, and then say at that point in time that they didn't meet the requirements and then they're done?
Well, I think that would abuse the policy a bit, but I'm looking at it more from the standpoint that if someone, I'm thinking more of the security guards, those guys I was familiar with. They're retirees, and if they're gone for 3 weeks in the month or more on vacation or sick or whatever, they lose their uniform allowance. And that's why I said that average should be put in. Now, if it's a different position and the skills are different, I can understand that. If they were to put somebody in there just in the last month, make them work 140 hours, that's sort of defeating that whole thing of wanting a skilled person in that job.
I guess, I think you're both bringing up good points, and I think to Supervisor Hilbert's point, I think he's talking about, we don't want it to be that it's a punishment because they miss a month, they take a couple months off for hunting or whatever, and I would agree with that perspective. And to your point, we, from a management perspective, I mean, theoretically, you could have someone takes 9 months off and they don't work for us at all, and then they work a whole bunch for 3 months. That doesn't help them keep their skills up either. So we would be managing it to get them scheduled enough frequently. And now each position in this pool, a jail transport deputy doesn't need a ton of repetitions to keep their skills up, as opposed to a communications officer. That's a very technical skill. They're going to need more consistency, So I think the policy, the average idea gives us the flexibility, so we're not punishing anyone if they're a retired employee that is doing this and they take a couple months off for whatever reason, as long as we're still managing that they're getting all their time in and they're keeping their skills up. But it also, we can on our end, from a management perspective, depending on the position and what we feel they need to, the frequency they need, it gives us that flexibility as well, that we can make sure that we're not allowing them to go 6 or 8 months without working enough. We can work that with them on that to make sure they're getting enough time in, so.
Sarah, they still can't work over 20 hours, correct?
These positions we watch to make sure that on a yearly basis, they don't average 20 hours or more a week or 1,040 hours in a year.
Any other questions, comments? We're going to get a motion in a second. Call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Okay. Discuss Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS COVID-19 vaccine requirements issued on November 4th, 2021. Sarah, you want to start this out, or you want me to?
We put it on just for discussion purposes. The Health Facilities Committee is meeting after this meeting to discuss this in greater detail. We did supply in your packet the draft documents, so this is more just for your discussion.
I can talk about this a little bit. It was brought up about OSHA. And OSHA requirement is a broad-based requirement, and that actually was in fact stayed by the Fifth Circuit, actually Fifth Court of Appeals in New Orleans. What this refers to is CMS is part of Health and Human Services, and they had a mandate. Right now, currently, they're in the 8th court, but also it's just an 8th court, but the district of the 8th court. So there's 3 levels of federal court. Just starting lowest is district, then circuit, and then appeals. So this is in the district. 10 states filed an appeal on this mandate. It has not been acted on as of now. But basically, what the DMS said is these are due by dates. You have to have the vaccine by this date and this date. And if you don't, there are consequences. One consequence is they're not going to pay you for things. Another consequence is you can be fined. And the third consequence is that you could lose Medicare and Medicaid funding. Now, Ed's here, right? Yeah. 85 to 90% of Clearview's funds come from Medicare and Medicaid, is that correct?
Correct.
And that is somewhere in around the $30 million.
Our total funding is around 30 million,
Okay.
so it'd be, in the 25 million range.
Okay, the $25 million range. So that's what the risk, so you're looking at a risk-benefit ratio of potentially losing $25 million, which would basically defund Medicare, and where that money would come from, I would have no idea.
And outside of the money, we would lose our licensure, which puts everybody over their home list, essentially. And right, we're the facility of last resort for most of them, so. That also puts Dodge County in a position of having to find homes for all of them. So it's not that simple to just say, even if we just say, okay, we can eat the $25 million, we'll find it somewhere else. We're not licensed to provide care anymore at that point. And you have to find homes for everybody living there. So, I mean, this is, I don't want to make a statement one way or another on the CMS mandate. It's very heavy-handed, but the consequences are real for not following it. There's really no words to it.
And if we look at just a recent Supreme Court case, it was against Maine. The state of Maine had actually a more, probably egregious policy that actually did not allow for religious exemptions. And the Supreme Court actually voted on to hear it. And they voted 6-3 against hearing it. And so they basically said, we're going to allow that to go through without the religious exemptions. And so you have a pretty good feeling of what the Supreme Court is thinking. I suppose if there was an injunction on this and they got injunctive relief, you could talk about it later. But in the interim, there still has to be planning to get this done. The staff has to know. The risk-benefit ratio, to me, it weighs heavily to lose potentially $25 million, the vast or 85% of funding. Are we probably going to lose some employees? Probably.
But the alternative, I think, and Ed, chime in if I'm way off, if we lose Medicare, Medicaid, we're shutting down.
Yes.
And I mean, do we want to shut down? And if we shut down, then I don't know where we're going to have these people. You said we got
That was
to,
the point I was making, is we.
yeah. You're not gonna, you got to find
Control the
places.
funding and they control the licensure. You can't provide care without licensure, you can't provide care without funding.
And unfortunately, no matter what, that's just a hard, cold fact. If we lose Medicare, Medicaid, they're not in business.
like I said, I don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna discuss the merits of the policy. I mean, that's not,
Yes.
we're past that point right now. Right now, it's, you know, this is what the policy is, how do we implement it? I can't,
Yeah.
you know, that's,
You know, how many people out at Clearville are vaccinated? What percentage of them are fully vaccinated?
the residents?
The residents?
No.
Staff?
Staff.
Right now, we're about 70.
70%, and not that long ago, we were at 50, so that improved. But the residents are close to 100%, is it? And, you know, you see, there was one, I think it was out east, where they had the residents not entirely vaccinated, but they were like 50% on the staff, and they're going through a bunch of COVID cases now, so I think that was putting more weight on having to, you know, we're getting told that we're gonna lose this Medicaid, Medicare monies, and if we lose that, we're done at Clearfield. Then we gotta decide as a county where we're going to put that obligation we got for these, for the constituents that need places for care. It's not just Clearview that's in this mode, is it?
No, this is every nursing home
In the
every
state.
nursing home in the state of Wisconsin.
And so then, if that's, every nursing home takes that position, I don't know what would happen.
I think that Medicare and Medicaid would never be stopped, even though they say it would.
There's, you know,
But,
you go
but
to,
by the same token, if 30% of your staff refuses to get vaccinated, it will in effect about do the same thing as losing Medicare and Medicaid, because you will not have the staff to be able to take care of the residents that you do it. So you'll be in the same boat no matter what. And that's a fact.
We keep the licenses.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it is.
It is big.
But-
you know, I can't say I can't speak to how many are gonna refuse it. You know, I know the health systems in the area that have gone, that went to the mandatory vaccination, the refusal rate, you know, for the ones who actually left has been, you know, has been under 2% in the industry. You know, when you're looking at it, you know, what is refusal rate across the industry been? It's been under 2%. So, again, I can't say, we may lose, that whole 30% may get up and leave. However, when you're looking at working in this industry, you're not gonna work in this industry, you're not gonna work in healthcare without the vaccination. CMS, you know, was pretty broad in who they picked with this requirement. Ambulatory surgery centers, clinics, rehab agencies, public health agencies, provider outpatient physical therapy, speech language pathology, community mental health centers, comprehensive outpatient rehabilitation facilities, critical access hospitals, end-stage renal disease facilities, home health agencies, home infusion therapy suppliers, hospices, hospitals, intermediate care facilities for individuals with intellectual disabilities, long-term care facilities, programs of all-inclusive care for the elderly, the PACE program, psychiatric residential treatment facilities, rural health clinics, federally qualified health centers. I mean, that's virtually everybody, that's virtually all of healthcare, because we all rely to some degree on Medicare funding, Medicare and Medicaid funding.
But if in fact that what this could happen and people say they aren't going to, all right, do you honestly believe that our federal government would throw people that need the help out onto the street? I don't believe that. Lisa had a question.
Go on, Lisa.
With all respect, I sat in on the call with all the administrators nationwide. Obviously, our administrator was on it. And you're right, the head of the CMS said, no, we're not going to pull your license right away. We're going to do an incremental, hey, if you don't do it, you're going to get this punishment. If you don't do it, you're going to get that punishment. We are going to do it. But he said, make, and I quote this, make no mistake, if you refuse to comply, we will withdraw the funding. And you're saying they're kicking the people out. That's our decision. If we don't comply, we're kicking people out. And if the 2% rate, if that's true, that was a 2% rate, remember that all the people around us that made this decision many months ago, those folks could have come to Clearview, where we did not require vaccinations, and it was still only 2%. Right now, Clearview is an island surrounded by mandatory vaccinations, like within an hour to an hour and a half. So I don't know why we would ever think the rate is going to exceed 2% when there's nowhere else to go, at least in healthcare. And there's a difference between license and funding and going out of business. Will these people go somewhere else? Maybe. Should we really have their families driving 2 or 3 hours to see them because we don't want the staff to be vaccinated? Or because we refuse to follow the federal government? I mean, that's just really unfair to the families. And these people don't have somewhere else to go in the community. This is the place with the highly skilled nursing care. They can't just go live with their daughter-in-law. They need skilled nursing care.
If you've been here earlier, Lisa, and listened to the public comments, I mean, there are so many areas where people dying from the vaccination and having total disability for life and stuff. It should be a personal choice as far as a vaccination. And the federal government is what they are doing is just holding it over our heads, and if you don't do what I say, well, that's not democracy anymore.
Oh, well, they have the right to do that. I'm just saying, we don't have the right to say no.
We have the right to elect our officials, and we screwed up, and now we're paying a consequence.
Maybe we are, but, closing Clearview, a multi-million-dollar facility that takes care of the residents here, I think that's not a very good
Well,
move
you
either.
should also be thinking about the staff. If they don't want it, and they're opposed to it, and they have good reason not to, or they don't want to feel they have to, that should not cost them their job. And that's been that way throughout the whole country.
And I'm sorry about that. I really am.
I think the decision on, I think, and is what Ed said, is that the decision, we're not making the decision that you gotta be vaccinated or not. Are we going to follow what the government is telling us that we have to do?
Yeah.
And the question on whether vaccines are good or not has been decided by the government and not by us here. We're not arguing whether the vaccine is good or not. If we want to keep Clearview viable and open, we need to sit there and have that money. Otherwise, we're ending up potentially losing all of the staff.
Well,
Not just
we've had
3% or what 10%.
We've had time after time, Ed come in here and say, hey, we got problems staffing. I asked about even closing up part of it because of staffing. And now you're gonna tell me that some people are gonna be terminated because they don't get the vaccination? So I know
We're not-
we will, and I
We're
know,
not making the rules.
I know we're not making the rules, but we're being told we have to, and that's not.
Go ahead.
Like guys, the only point I'm not discussing the merits of the mandate. That, in terms of, for us, that ship has sailed. We have deadlines we have to meet. I agree with you. We have staff. This wasn't a condition of employment when they signed on, and the game changed on them in the middle. And I wish it wouldn't have happened that way. I truly do. I don't think it's fair, but unfortunately, the way CMS rolls these out, they control the purse strings. So we have to do this. And it's not, and again, I want to say it's not just the purse string, it's the regulatory string. They license us. Without licensure, without a license, forget the money, we can't provide care, period, without a license, no matter who the payer source is. So, they license us, they're responsible for a good portion of our finances. Again, we're not here to discuss the merits of the vaccine mandate. That isn't something we have any control over. Right now, we're just, myself and our team and the committee is just how we implement it. How we implement it in the fairest manner possible to make sure the staff is treated fairly, that staff that are eligible for medical exemptions, we help them, get those medical exemptions. Staff that are eligible for religious exemptions, we help them get those religious exemptions. And those who have those exemptions, making sure that we have them working in the facility in the safest manner possible, utilizing the right PPE. I would love to be able to discuss the merits of a vaccine mandate, but I can't. That's not what this is about for us at this point. I mean, we've discussed, we've talked to our legislative leaders, we've talked to CMS, and this is what they came up with. So, they were supposed to have it out to us in September, they had it out to us in October, and then they dropped it on us on November 4th and said, you got 60 days to get this done. And by the way, we're going to do it to you over the holidays. Merry Christmas. Basically how we felt. So, I wish things were different, but they're not. This is the hand we were dealt at this point.
Yeah.
What I see here is that if the federal government really had the authority to do this, they wouldn't need to pull on the purse strings and yank money and insurance away to get it to happen. They know they don't have this authority. They know people are against it. They have everybody over a bucket, and we have to decide if we believe they have that authority or not. If we do, then we'll just roll over. If we don't, we will start using our heads to find a way to pull through this at Clearview, not losing any of our staff. I believe that's a possibility if we would just back up and reevaluate what could be done. That's what's done in the private sector. When people want to stay in business, they pull back and review things, and maybe there's some possibilities we haven't thought of yet. I would encourage the Health Facilities Committee to really think about that and saying, well, let's not always do things the same way. Maybe there's something else we can do to be a leader here to show that there's a way to get along here and a way to make it a win-win for all staff who do or do not choose to get vaccinated. Thank you.
Well, anything else from the committee? Well, we're not making a decision on it here, right? So, it was basically a discussion. So, are we good? Okay, discuss employee COVID premium bonuses, next steps.
Jim, do you want to take this?
This item's on the agenda to seek further direction on the proposal that you're aware of. The proposal has not changed regarding the COVID bonuses using American Rescue Plan Act fund. What has changed somewhat is there appears to be consensus that the full county board wants to develop a plan or a budget related to the utilization of the American Rescue Plan Act fund. And so as you are aware, what had been proposed would be to use the American Rescue Plan Act funds for the premium bonus payment to employees for 21 and 22. That was at a prior discussion by this committee. And the total amount, off the top of my head, but just with not factoring Clearview, because that was a different funding source, with the roll-ups, help me out, there about 1.7 million, is that correct?
Yeah, 1.7.
1.7 covering both years, cumulatively for 21 and 22, and that's what the roll-up. So we're seeking some input because we've had questions by employees because it has been discussed, widely discussed in public meetings. So we're seeking further direction on how best to proceed. At one time, looking at potentially to bring in a county board in December of 2021, because the county board has the ultimate authority on use of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So with that being said, trying to seek your input and direction on how best to proceed.
So Jim, with our discussion and if we voted on it, would be to bring that to whatever group is going to look at how the distribution of the ARP funds is going to be distributed?
I'll try this, because I don't like to have my back to the audience. You want to repeat that?
Sure. So if we would discuss this and make a recommendation, that would then go to whatever group is going to make the final determination on the distributions of the ARP funds is going to be distributed.
It's my understanding, based on recent discussion, it's going to be the full county board, not a ad hoc committee or task force. It's going to be the entire board. And the way that early on, the process as outlined was that recommendations for the use of the American Rescue Plan Act funds would be generated from a committee and go to finance and ultimately the county board, with the county board having the final authority. A committee does not have the authority, the way this was established. A committee does not have the sole responsibility of allocating funds. Only the county board could do that.
So if we would make a recommendation, then this would go directly to the county board to look at? Or do they want, I mean, I have no idea if they want to look at this in combination with everything else that they want to fund, or we're going to do it piecemeal.
Well, there was some discussion, and again, this hasn't been discussed fully at a county board meeting, but there was some prior discussion at executive finance that there was certain opinions offered that the board should develop a budget for the entire 17 million and work that out first. And that has not happened at this point. But as I stated, this entire issue has not gone to the full county board either. There's been some discussion at the executive committee level and at the finance committee level. Obviously, there's been discussion at the human resource committee level, but there has not been a general discussion by all 33 board members at a county board meeting regarding this thought process, other than the resolution that was adopted earlier this year designating that county board approval is required for all uses of American Rescue Plan Act funds. So it's a little bit, let's say, fluid at this time, without having a committee, like an ad hoc committee or a task force. It appears that the direction is to all the county board, but that has not happened yet either.
So if we would approve this, it would put this money into that hat, or potentially, however the county board feels, they could vote on it or wait to have an overall picture of how they want to do things.
Right, in theory, in theory, since this came from a recommendation from the Human Resource Committee, in theory, it could be moved forward through the Finance Committee and ultimately the county board. But I think at the county board level, without having that prior discussion, I don't know what the opinion of all 33 board members are related to that. So it could certainly be done that way, and then would that generate the discussion at the county board level to begin the process? I don't know. I can't speak obviously for all 33 board members, but just going by what the discussion has been at recent executive and finance committee. That's why we're looking for some direction here is, what's the appropriate next step? Because the actual proposal has not changed.
Ready?
Well, I think when the board management has decided what the road is, I guess I'd like this to still go forward as a request of the ARPA funding. Request of the use of the ARPA funding. I still support the concept, however it's determined. And if it wasn't a full board, would this be the type of resolution appropriation commitment that requires a 2/3 vote for approval?
Kim here?
I was looking for Kim.
Wait,
Probably, but I just wanted to ask.
because the funding for this is not included in the adopted 2022 budget. The actual, the ARPA funding,
It's not in any budget.
right, but the dollars have been received by the county, but it has not been allocated, this type of fund has not been allocated in the 2022 budget at this time. I mean, if you wish to proceed, that's up to you, just tell us, because then that would, could start the resolution process, which then would go through the appropriate committees and wind up at the county board. If you want to do something different, we need to know that as well.
I'm in favor of going ahead with what we originally came up with. And make that in a formal resolution and go forward to finance and into the board.
Even if the board decides that they want to hold off until they get everything put together and view it as a total package, then that's up to the board.
That's right.
And we do have examples which we could provide to the appropriate committees and all county board members of how some of our neighboring counties have approached the use of ARPA funds and premium pay and how they designate that. So we do have that information which we can share, and I was planning to share with the executive committee for the next meeting, which is scheduled for December 6th. So what's being proposed here is far from unique.
I mean, there was some discussion at the strategic plan meeting that we wait till we finish with that, and then we have an idea of what the strategic plan would entail, and then we can incorporate all that into it as a single package. I don't know how the board's going to vote on it, because obviously there's barely a quorum there. But yeah, we can present it and then see where it lies after that, what the county board feels about it.
And from a timing perspective, I believe this committee may meet December 7th, maybe? I think that's the first Tuesday. The executive committee is meeting on Monday the 6th. And finance, member is correct, is meeting on Monday the 13th. County board meeting is Tuesday the 21st. Is it December 1st?
Tuesday, December 7th is the next HR committee meeting.
The first is a Wednesday, and that's whatever date.
First Tuesday is the 7th.
Correct.
So,
Personally, after how many months we've been discussing this, listening at the county board meetings, it's gonna be like herding cats, is how I look at it, because we have no one that steps up and sets a priority on how we should spend that ARPA money. There's factions up there that don't think we should spend any of the ARPA money. And if we are, that we're just doing money grabs with all of this. And I've also heard that this 1.7 million for the employees would be a money grab. I don't agree with that. I agree with Richie. I think personally, we should send our proposals there, and they could be voted down by the county board, so be it. This, the mentality that you're gonna have 33 members come up with a plan, I just, it's hilarious to me that anybody that thinks that 33 members are gonna judge this and come up with a plan is ridiculous. I gotta go with Richie and say, I think each committee has its priorities, and they should all be submitted to the finance, county board, and have an up and down vote either way. Either they're gonna accept it or they're not, period.
That's my sentence.
Any further discussion? Richie, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go with our original proposal for the ARPA funds for our employees and go to finance and then to the board.
That's with the December meeting schedule, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm not gonna be there.
I'll second it.
We have a motion.
My second thing.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion passes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That helps us internally about this to be prepared.
Okay. Review, discuss, consider personnel records.
We have a number of them. I'll go through the list here. We have one communications officer leave. Is John Rosenmeyer. He is leaving employment. We have administrative support specialist at the sheriff's office. Deb Call is retiring. We've got a number of corrections officer personnel requisitions. These are, there's 8 corrections officers. This is due to the retirements and people leaving that position, just getting the paperwork in place. So there's a number of them that have left a while ago. This is just an attempt to make sure that we've got all of our ducks in a row. Those. We've got a corrections sergeant. Matt Hoopas has left employment with us. We have an RN Public Health. Amanda Henry left employment. We have a program assistant in clinical services, Amy Thielen, also left employment with us. We have 2 economic support specialists, one Meriden Flint and Mariah Ham, also left employment. We have custodian Andy Denur. He was promoted to the custodian lead position, so this is to refill his position. And then we've got a summer intern position in land and water conservation to start December 31st for a total of 140 hours. This is a part-time occasional, non-benefited position. And then Director of Dodge County Family Court Services, Shelby Brandsma is leaving employment with Dodge County as well.
Any questions on those?
Have we had any exit interviews or any of these people?
All of them are either scheduled or we had them. I only have 2 of those in that list that I did not do, only because they were last, they just left.
Mr. Chair. Are we going to be able to,
Hold on for a second.
are we going to be able to know what they are?
The outcome of the interview?
Yes.
Yes, we will be giving them.
We're
Please.
doing a summary for you.
Sure.
I have one correction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just one correction. John Rosenmeyer is not actually leaving employment. He's going from full-time to part-time. He wants to try a different type of career, but he's going to stay with us in just a part-time status. So just one correction there.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Any questions on those? entertain a motion.
Joe?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Going further, I got a correction on one for land water conservation, and that's my mistake. The preferred start date is of December 31st. That's actually the beginning date. So the start date is like 2 weeks ago. That's my error.
So you're saying that December 31st is of 2022 or
Of this year.
Of 2021.
Would be the ending date, yeah.
Okay.
That's a summer intern.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. And motion passes. I know, sorry, it's bad. Okay. Review, discuss, consider leave of absence request.
All right, we have a number, and I will turn that over to Tanya. So our first one is an employee at Human Services and Health. This is for an extension of a previous leave, which will go through 11/22. And this is a non-benefited employee, and we do have the medical documentation to support it, and this person does not meet eligibility for FMLA. You have them all at once, correct?
Yeah.
The next leave request is for an employee of Human Services and Health. This is an extension of a leave. This is now a general leave. The state and federal FMLA leave for 2021 were previously exhausted. This is to care for a child. Although the leave is approved as being requested as being continuous, it is only for intermittent. This person is back to work and working, but may need occasional appointments. They do work part-time and will try their best to make appointments on their days off. So, that one. And the next one is an employee of the sheriff's office. This is an ongoing leave that is another extension. And the extension actually is from October 15th to 12/15, and the reason for the lateness is due to not getting the medical certification to present to you. And you had asked at one previous meeting to be provided with an update when they're getting close to using 6 months of unpaid leave. And so this extension is through December 15th, the request. The 6 months of unpaid medical is expected to exhaust on 12/25. Christmas Day is the day that the 6 months unpaid medical would be reached. But the request is only until December 15th. Also has maxed out all state and federal FMLA. And the last one is for a reduced hours leave. This is also an extension of a previous leave that has come to the committee. This is to extend it until January 1st of 2022. However, this person has given notice of retirement as well. And they will be living, I think, the beginning of December is their retirement date. So this is an extension of that for reduced hours. Again, all of them have the supporting medical documentation, and this one too has previously exhausted their 2021 state and federal FMLA.
Committee, any questions on those?
After the 6 months is up, then you have to review more than that too. What is the procedure?
So, after the 6-month medical, county provided medical, they could request a 6-month or up to 6 months, it's approved through this committee, county general leave, which the difference between a medical and a general is under a medical, the employee still needs to pay their portion of their health and dental, life, all of their benefits. Under a general leave, they're required to pay 100% of all of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Review salary, wage, and status changes.
All right, we have a step increase for a sheriff's deputy sworn union employee, Martin Kimberline, going to step 4 on 10/29. We have a voluntary reduction in hours. John Rosemeyer is going from full-time to part-time pool on 11/3. We've got some new hires. Haley Fritz, case manager in human services, started with us on 11/8. Kayla Twarski, customer service specialist at the clerk of courts, started with us on 11/1. Trista Champ, starting as a child support assistant on 11/18. We have new hires, Nancy Kapazanjian, county board supervisor, appointed on 11/2. Raymond Teschke, transport driver in human services, will be starting with us on 11/18. We have a rehire, Stephanie Justman, is starting with us on 11/29 as a purchasing agent. Yeah, she was a previous employee and then left and then was a county board supervisor, so is not promotion, Mark Ketter, correctional sergeant on 11/18. We have some part-time rehires. Carol Baker is a part-time rehire for our corrections officer pool, started with us on 10/20. And Jane Hilgendorf, a dining site coordinator in human services, started with us on 10/25. And then we have a study placement correction on 1/7. Hope Ferguson met the qualifications to be a senior social worker on that date, and she was placed at, I believe, a senior or a social worker 2. So this was the correction to place her in a senior social worker position on 7/1.
Any questions on those? Okay. Human Resource Director's report.
Employee resignations and retirements, other than what we discussed here, I don't think we have any others. Wendy is on via Teams, and I'll let her explain Clearview.
So we had one senior clerk filled, which was a full-time position, and then we have 4 retirees between now and the beginning of January. So we have our HIM coordinator, and then a life enrichment specialist, and a full-time HA2, household assistant 2, and then 1 housekeeper.
Any questions on those?
Further? As far as closed session,
Yes.
I am still doing some back and forth with the association,
Okay.
and I don't have anything to really go over. My suggestion would be maybe if we could schedule a meeting after the holidays, the first, the week of, I think it's November 30th, to go over everything. Hopefully by then I'll have heard back from the union.
Future agenda items, that would be one. Any other ones?
I'd like employee wages put on the agenda.
We should probably, possibly, something with the sheriff's,
Signing bonuses?
signing bonuses. Anything else? Okay, our next regular meeting, you have December 1st or 7th?
December 7th.
7th.
And then if we could,
The 30th?
the week of the 30th, the week of the 29th, sorry. So it's the 29th, 30th, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd.
I'm good 29th or 30th.
Fine, either way.
Anybody else have an issue with that?
Moving the first, from the first to the 30th.
No, the first is the 7th. That was just,
There is no first.
No first.
There is no first, it's 7th.
There's a typo on
Okay. And then what did you say, Julie?
The 29th or 30th.
that. Monday, Tuesday?
No, 20th or 30th would be a Wednesday, Thursday.
no,
No.
November is
No,
Monday,
December.
Tuesday.
December.
No, this is November.
Oh, you're
She's
talking
talking
November?
November.
Oh,
The 30th is fine.
30th is fine for me also.
3 is fine for me.
I've got a dentist appointments in the morning, and we usually go to 5 after that, so.
Okay, 29th?
29th is wide open,
Fine.
that's,
I can do the 29th.
that's.
9 o'clock, regular time?
Yep.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay.
You said the 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, December 7th. The 7th and the 21st, right?
The 7th and the 21st
Okay.
are the meetings in December.
21st.
Okay. There's nothing else, I'm ready to chair. Thank you.